Hey, today I'm going to show you how to make one of my favorite basses. This is the noise bass. Okay, so this is one of my favorite basses. It is like the heaviest sound imaginable. This up loud on a sound system, it just absolutely sounds huge. It doesn't seem to be used that much in drum and bass. It's more of a halftime kind of a deal, or like wonky space bass. I don't know. It's all about distortion and overtones and craziness. So first I'm going to show you how to make it with Operator, and then I'm going to show you how to make it with Serum. All right, and the noise bass sounds like this. Now, another reminder that if you do enjoy these videos, please do share them around with your friends. And if you are interested in downloading the patches from these videos, they are over on Patreon. There'll be a link somewhere. Let's get onto the sound design. All right, so first up, let's build the noise bass in Operator. I'm going to get an operator and I'm just going to drag it in. Now, the core sound of the noise bass is just a really low subtone. So I'm going to just get the oscillator view up, only show the first 16 harmonics. I'm just going to draw in a few bass tones. So this sounds like this, which is a perfectly acceptable place to start. Let's get an EQ so I can show you the harmonics as we build this thing up. We've just got the first few harmonics coming through in bass. Now what we want to do is use multiple operators as a chain. So we're going to group that operator and we're going to duplicate the first one that we created. So I'll label the first one sub and I'll label the second one noise. Okay, so for our noise later, what we want to do is use noise as our oscillator. So we're going to make sure that we've got operator A selected. We're going to change wave to noise white. So now we just have noise. I'll play it, it'll be a bit piercing. And you hear how there's just noise layered over the bass. We don't really need that. What we want to do is filter the noise. So I'm going to use a high pass filter on 12 dB slope. I'm just going to bring the cutoff down till we can kind of hear the noise. There we go, somewhere around there. All right, now we're going to use the LFO to essentially cut up that noise sound but leave the sub unaffected. So I'm going to switch on the LFO and I'm going to put the rate to high. Well, the speed selector to high, and I'm going to put the rate to 60, which should tune it to the same pitch as our note. And I'm going to turn up the rate to key, so that will key track it across the keyboard. So when we push a low note, it'll go slower. When we push a high note, it'll go faster. And I'm going to dial up the range to 100 so that it's going to be taking its full effect. We also need to switch off the default destinations and set destination B to be oscillator volume A. So we've set this LFO up with the rate that we need, and we've set the destination to volume A and switched off the default destinations. So now we've got this. You can hear that flutteriness, and the flutteriness moves with the note that you play. If I play a high note, if I play a low note, and if I play just a nice heavy sub, we get that kind of rattle with it. Now that's the core basis of the sound. The most important thing from there is to use some creative processing. So I'm just going to use distortions and modulation effects and things like that. Through the magic of editing, that should just happen now. All right, so here's an example of some post-processing that really makes this come to life. Here's the sound as it started. I've turned down the noise layer a little bit because it gets a little too overbearing with all this additional processing. Let's chuck on a saturator with a sinoid fold and 9 dB of boost. Already it's much louder, more present, more distorted. We can put a notch in there to scrape out some extra mids. We can use an overdrive to distort the noise a little, give it even more raspy texture. Use the chorus to create some sides. It's a bit subtle, but it's there. Then we've got another saturator just to clip it if it gets over 0. It's not really doing anything in this case. We've got a utility here which is pushing up the sides so we can hear the side information a lot better. And we've got this EQ8 here, which is just rolling off the tops. We don't really need our bass to stretch up to 15 kilohertz. It's not really necessary. And then last of all, you can see we've got this EQ8 here so we can see what's going on. So without all that processing, it actually sounds a little bit tame now. And with the processing, Now, the exact processing you want to put on your noise base is up to you. There's heaps of potential because it's such a simple bass. It responds really nicely to all sorts of different processing. You can try flanges, phases, notches, distortions, all sorts of things. Particularly guitar effects really work nicely because you're distorting like a clean low end and a bright top end. They don't really interfere with each other too much. You can kind of create this full spectrum sounds, which go from a very clean low through to a distorted top, or you can create something with a nice big chunky gap in the middle where you can slot all of your other instruments. The sky's really the limit in terms of how versatile the noise base is. Let's make one in Serum. All right, so let's make something pretty similar in Serum. I have the init preset here. It sounds like this. So it's a saw. Let's get a sine or a triangle. So we'll use basic shapes and we'll go for a triangle. So it sounds like this. Already pretty subby. I'm going to use the noise oscillator and you'll notice that together they just sound like this. So we want to kind of high pass the noise. Let's use the filter on one of the high passes, maybe the 12, and instead of sending the triangle there, we'll just send the noise there. So now we've got control over the tone of the noise a little. All right, so that gets us some of it. Let's turn the level of the noise up. Cool. Now what we want to do is give it that flutter that's kind of the core of the sound. We're going to use LFO1. We're going to put it on trigger mode so it re-triggers with each key press so it becomes kind of consistent. And we're going to set the rate in a minute, but we're going to first assign that LFO amount to the level, and I'm going to go for a negative amount all the way down to 0. You could do it the other way. So you could do it like that and then set the amount there. But for today, I'm going to use the negative amount just because. So now we've got this. We want to speed that up a fair bit. So to me, that sounds pretty good. We could go a little higher. There we go. So I'm hitting F and we know that our F note was around 44.6, I think. Can we type that in? 44.6. So that should be pitched with our incoming note. Now the other thing here is we can use our note parameter and it should scale properly now. Cool, so now we can control the tonality of the noise. And we can go on to use some additional effects. Now it's interesting to note here that we could actually use the sub. So let's use the triangle out of the sub because it's the same thing. That frees us up to use the other oscillators if we wanted to. And once again, now that we've got the core of the sound baked in, let's just add some effects. So through the magic of editing, I bet you that's going to happen pretty quickly. So after a little bit of fiddling around, here's what I've come up with for some effects. We've got hyper. So here's the sound without all the effects. And let's chuck on hyper. So not too much difference. Let's give it some distortion. It's really shredding it. Let's use the chorus. A little more stereo. And compressor with heaps of gain. This is in multiband mode with the mid sucked out a little. And an EQ, again, to take out some of that like more problematic 1K and a bit. Then we got a really heavy, thick bass. It's almost, because of the hyper, sounds like it's kind of greasy. It's got a little bit of movement to it. So if we compare Serum with Operator, here's Serum. Here's Operator. In here, they're quite different, but they come from the same core sound. It's just the additional processing has made them sound quite unique. It's heaps of fun to come up with different variations on this. I'll do a couple now, and I'll check back in with you in 2 seconds. All right, with the magic of editing, here we are. We've got our original Operator, and then I made a variation on that. And we've got our original Serum, and I made a variation on that. So I'm not going to go through those variations, but I hope you get the idea that just by taking a sine wave or a triangle, something with very few harmonics, and then stacking a noise layer on top, then setting an LFO to modulate the amplitude of the noise at the same pitch as the fundamental note of your sine or your sub oscillator, And then using creative effects to just smash it up and get it real dirty, you can make the heaviest and meanest basses. So that was the noise bass. It's a really incredibly heavy sound, and it's really versatile. You can use it in a lot of different places. It sounds really great in slower tunes, right on the one, just a nice big fluttery. I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll catch you in the next video.